Hey guys, Ben here, and welcome to your second C++ game challenge episode. Today you're going to be making Tic Tac Toe. I'm going to go and show you an example program made by Matthew Marshall. He is the web designer for Seed of Andromeda, and his program is really awesome. If you want to really go above and beyond, you should try to make something kind of like this. So it says, welcome to Tic Tac Toe. The first player should enter their name. My name is Ben. What would you like your symbol to be, Ben? My symbol is going to be the $sign. The next player should enter their name, and the next player's name is Hippo, and Hippo's Hippo symbol is H. And we can even add another player. You can have 3 or 4 players or even more probably. We're going to say, no, I don't want to add another player. Now, how wide would you like the board to be? It doesn't even have to be 3 by 3. This is really cool. I'm going to say I want it to be a 5 by 5 board. Alright, and how many markers do you need? I'm going to say you need to get 3 markers in a row to win. Alright, so here's our giant tic-tac-toe board. Yours will probably just be 3 by 3, but this is a really cool program that lets you specify a different size. So I'm going to place it dead center. I don't know if that's actually a good idea. Hippo is going to place it at 2, 2. I'm going to place it at 3, 2. Let's see, 2, 3 for Hippo. I don't know what I'm doing. 3, 1. Let's just win, because this is going to take forever. Uh-oh. Ben has won. Oh, I won. I didn't even realize it. I forgot. You only need to get 3 in a row. Okay, so whenever I got 3 of these $signs in a row, it said Ben has won. Would you like to have another game? No, I don't want to have another game. Notice how if I type in something weird like a number, it actually checks that. I haven't taught you how to check that yet, so you can just assume that they type in the right thing. Would you like to have another game? I'm going to say no, and that'll end the game. Press any key to continue. So making something like that would be really, really awesome. That's how you get to become a good programmer, is you go way above and beyond like that. You don't have to do that. If you look over here, you can kind of see his classes. He's got like all these different classes: player.cpp, gamemanager.cpp, board.cpp. Those are all they're their own classes that do certain things. So definitely when you're making this game, try to use classes, definitely use functions, use all this stuff together that you've learned so far to make your program. So you can go ahead and pause the video now. I would recommend that you start with a blank slate. That's how you're going to get really good, to start completely blank and build from there. So go ahead and pause the video, and when you unpause, I will give you the hints. Okay, if you unpause the video, that means you are stuck or you already finished your program. The first hint is you need to store the board in a 2D array. You should declare it like char board 3, 3, which means it's going to be a 2-dimensional array of dimensions 3. This is going to be 3 rows and 3 columns. Empty spaces should be the empty space char. So remember, you type a char like this, you type anything you want in here. You can actually type a space in here too, and that will be a space. And that's how you can kind of show empty spaces on your board. Alright, the next hint is get input from the user to determine the X and Y coordinates of the spot he wants to place a marker at. Be sure each player has a unique character marker. You could use an X or an O, or if you want, you could do like what Matthew did and allow them to type their own letter in. In order to check if a player has won, use if statements to check if a row, column, or diagonal is all the same. If it is, a player won. So we're just going to be using if statements to check each of the rows, each of the columns, and then each of the 2 diagonals in the case of a 3 by 3 board to see if all of them match up in one of those directions. And if they do, we know that somebody won. And all we have to do is do that each time we loop through the game loop. So at the very end of each iteration of the game loop, after the user or one of the users, after they place a marker down, we're going to check and see if they won the game with that marker. And we also need to be sure that when the board is full, we say that it's a tie game. Now, if you want, you could even go like super above and beyond and try to make AI, but I'll probably be actually showing you how to make Tic-Tac-Toe AI in the future, so you don't really need to worry about that now unless you just want to go for it. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and try again with these hints. If you get stuck, unpause it and I will work through my own, hopefully not too terrible solution right in front of you. Okay, if you unpause the video, that means you are ready to watch me attempt to make this for you. Haven't done this yet, so we'll see how it works out. Alright, so we're going to start by including IOStream, because we want to probably do some printing. We're going to say using namespace std, and we're going to have our int main function. Alright, so here's where all of our code is going to go. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use a bunch of classes. I'm going to have a class called, let's call it Tic Tac Toe game. And this Tic Tac Toe game is going to be what actually does all the heavy lifting and does the actual Tic Tac Toe calculations and stuff. So let's make a new class. I'm going to go over here to the right. I'm going to right click on tutorial videos, add class, and it's going to be a C++ class. Yes, I'm going to call mine Tic Tac Toe game. There we go. And that should create it. I'll get rid of the destructor, don't need that. And there we go. So Tic Tac Toe game is going to have a private board variable. Private, and let's make it out of chars. So we're going to say char board, and it's going to be a 3x3 array. I'm not going to make mine have the ability to be multiple dimensions like Matthew did. And the constructor is actually going to build that 3x3 board. We can make the constructor initialize it. And Visual Studio was kind enough to automatically make the constructor for us. Oh, I need to zoom in so you can actually see what I'm doing. It doesn't auto zoom for me. So the Visual Studio was kind enough to make this. So I'll go ahead and start writing code in here. All we need to do is to initialize the board, we need to set all of the values equal to an empty space. Now what I could do is just do that in here, but instead I'm going to make this function call another function called void ClearBoard. And this ClearBoard function is going to basically make the board all empty spaces. And the reason I'm making a separate function for this is so that I can call ClearBoard later on whenever I want to restart the game or something. So I don't have to make a new Tic-Tac-Toe game object. I can just call ClearBoard on it. So Tic-Tac-Toe game, as soon as it gets created, it's going to call its own ClearBoard function. ClearBoard. And then what ClearBoard is going to do is it's going to loop through the array. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus. And then for int j equals 0, j is less than 3, j plus plus. If you are programming along with me, make sure you pause the video if I'm going too fast for you and type this stuff in. So each time it goes through a spot in the array, we're just going to set that spot equal to a 0. So we're going to say board I j equals, not a 0, sorry, a space. So that's going to clear out our board completely. Now we want to be able to print the board to the screen. So let's make another function, void print board. This is going to print out the board. And let's go ahead and put comments here. Prints the board, empties the board. Okay, so print board is going to print the board out, and that's going to be a pretty simple function. Void Tic-Tac-Toe game. Remember, we always have to tell it which class it belongs to. Print board. And then we have to actually print the board out in the body. So all we're going to do is do some kind of special little pretty print statements. Let's do a new line at the beginning. And then let's do, how about a, kind of like how Matthew did, let's do like a 1, 2, 3. I think it looked something like that. Or 1, 2, let's just do it like this. 1, 2, 3 for the top, and then a new line. And then we're going to loop through each row and print out the board. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 3, we're going to print out that row. And the way we're going to print it out is, let's print out a cout. We're going to print out, we need to have like something to the left, so we need to have a vertical line like that. Oops. A vertical line, and then we can actually see out the 3 elements, each separated by their own vertical lines, or something like that. So we could say board I0, and then another vertical line, and then board I1. This probably isn't going to look good, so I'll probably print it out and come back and fix it and make it look better. And then board I2, and L. Oh, and then a vertical line, and then a new line. So this is going to print out our board. What we probably should do is also have, before each board row, we should print out just a bunch of vertical lines. So we could do like a cout, something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is probably going to look absolutely terrible, but we're about to find out. Let's go ahead and just print out the board and see what it looks like. So we're getting errors because we forgot to include stuff. So let me make sure I do that. Include. Actually, I like to put that above this. Include. Actually, no, I don't. I want to put it below. Ignore that. Include IOStream, and then using namespace std again. So now it's going to make those errors go away, and a semicolon there. All right, so this should, I forgot I++, silly me. This should print out the board that we have created if we remember to put semicolons everywhere and stop getting errors. So let's go ahead and create a board object, tic-tac-toe game, that's what I'm going to call it. And then since the constructor builds the board, we don't have to do anything else. So we can just call game dot, and then the function is PrintBoard. And of course I'm getting errors because I forgot to include tic-tac-toe. Oops. You have to use quotation marks. Tic-tac-toe game.h. Alright, so we're including tic-tac-toe game.h, so now we can create our object, and then we're going to print the board. And let's also do a return 0 and a system pause. System pause. There we go. Let's do this and see what it does. See how ugly it looks, see how much we need to fix it up. Oh, that looks just absolutely terrible. So, forgot new lines in here, that's the issue. Let's do that. We need a new line right there. Now let's see what it looks like. Alright, we're getting somewhere with this. Let's zoom in. Oh, I didn't zoom in. So it looks like the dashes, there needs to be 2 more dashes. And then we need another row of dashes on the bottom, and we need to also number the left side 1, 2, 3. So let's do that. Okay, zoom out. This is going to be the longest part, just getting the thing to look good. Alright, so I said 3 more dashes. And then let's do another one at the very end, like that. And then before each row, let's print out a number. So we should print out I plus 1. Like that. I'm wondering how ugly that will look. Let's see. Probably should have figured out what I was going to do. Alright, you know what? I'm happy with this. Here's our tic-tac-toe board, except I should get rid of one of these dashes at the end. Alright, so we can put our X's and our O's inside those little gaps in there, and it should work awesome. So there's our print board. Now we don't have to come back to this. We're happy with it. Get rid of that and get rid of that. Alright, print board is set. And ClearBoard is set. Now we need to actually structure the game loop. Now what I'm going to do is instead of doing the game loop and all that in main, I'm going to actually make this tic-tac-toe game class handle its own game loop. So what I'm going to do is have a void play game. And this is going to be the actual game loop. And it's going to do basically what we did before in the other challenge episode where we had like a while loop. Actually, I don't think we had a while loop in the other challenge episode, but anytime we actually do a game loop, we have to put it somewhere. We could put it in main, but that's going to make main really ugly. So I think we should just put it in the tic-tac-toe game. So void play game, and then since this ClearBoard and PrintBoard are only going to be used by play game, we can actually make them private functions, meaning we can't call them outside of the class. So up here, this is going to give me an error because now it's a private variable, but that's okay because actually I want play game to call those functions. So we're going to say void play game here. We're going to copy this. And then what we can do is copy these this function right here and put it in play game. And this will be where the actual game gets played. And then all we have to do is call game.playGame. And this is like literally all of int main. This is the only thing we're going to have to do for int main because game.playGame is going to handle everything. Alright, so let's go ahead and we don't need game dot because we are in the function. We can just call PrintBoard. Let's go ahead and run it. There we go. It did the same thing as before. So the first thing we need to do is define what the player's letters are. So we're going to say X and O are their characters. So we could say, let's go right here, char player 1 equals X, char player 2 equals Y. And what we also need to do is keep track of who is currently playing. So we're going to say char current player, okay? and we can initialize that to x, but I'm actually going to initialize it in the game loop. So what we need to do is create our game loop. This is going to keep going for the length that the players are playing the game. And then what I actually am probably going to do is after the game is over, we can check in main if they want to play again, and if they do, we just call game.playGame again. That's probably going to be the best way to structure this. So let's go ahead and make our game loop. We're going to say while, and then we're going to have stuff, and then we need a flag that checks when the game is done. So let's just have a boolean. We can have a bool is done, and we'll set this equal to false. So while is done equals to false. I'm sure this looks very familiar to you. We've done this before. So while is done is false, we're going to actually play the game. So what we need to do is, based on which player it is, we need to get input from them. So first thing we need to do is set, let's go ahead and initialize current player to X. There we go. And then if it's the player X's turn, he's going to input a number or two numbers, like an X and a Y coordinate, that represents which space he wants to actually put something in. So let's go ahead and write a function that's like get X coordinate and get Y coordinate. And we'll make them private functions because they're only being used in Tic Tac Toe. Void get X coord. And this should actually be a int because it's going to return an integer function. And a void get Y coord. So this is going to get the X coordinates and the Y coordinates from the user. Let's go ahead and write them. We'll do it right here. It's actually good practice to have your constructor at the top. It's a good idea to keep your functions in the same order in your CPP file that they are in your header file. It just makes it easier to navigate. I don't think that's the case right now, but that's okay. All right, so get X coord. We're going to say cout, enter the X coordinate, and we're going to say cin, and we're going to have an int X up here and cin to the X. Then we're going to just return X. And then for the get Y coord, we do pretty much the same thing. We just change the print statement. So we're going to say int Y, cny, return Y, enter the Y coordinate. So the first thing we want to do in our while loop is print the board. So print board like that. And then we need to ask him for his input. So we're going to say we'll have an integer X and Y, int X, Y. Right here, we can actually, I don't know if I've actually even showed you this, but we can actually declare two variables like int X and int Y. We can declare them both on the same line with int X, comma Y. That's the same as saying int X and int Y on separate lines. So what we're going to do is say X equals get X coord, and then Y equals get Y coord. So this is going to get the X coordinates and the Y coordinates of the input so that we can actually place something down. So now what we want to do is check and see if he actually is putting the X and Y coordinates in a spot that he's allowed to. So if he's trying to put an X coordinate, or if he's trying to put like an X down on top of an X that's already there, or on top of a Y that's already there, we want to tell him that he did something wrong, right? We want to print out, hey, that's not where you're supposed to put it. So what we should do is write a function that checks that. So, or just write a function that places it down and returns a bad indicator, like returns false if he wasn't allowed to place it there. So we're going to write, let's make a function called void, or say, sorry, bool, because it's going to return true if it worked and false if it was bad or something like that. Bool place marker. I think I'm calling them markers. There's probably a better way. And we want to tell it to place it in an X and a Y spot like that. So we're going to pass in the X and Y coordinates. So let's go ahead and place this. I'm actually going to put it below get Y coord. And let's put it right here. So we need to put Tic Tac Toe game right there. And what we're going to do is check and see if we can place something at that spot. So we're going to say if board I J, if that, board YX, if board YX is not equal to a space, then we're going to say return false, meaning I'm sorry, we weren't able to place a spot there. And whenever you have a return statement, remember it just quits from the function. So if this didn't happen, then we can actually place the piece. So we're going to say board y, x equals, and we don't know what it needs to be equal to. We need to pass in the current player. So we're going to add up here at the end char current player. We're going to pass that in, and we'll do it here too, char current player. There we go. So now we can say board yx equals current player, and that will set whatever's at that board spot, or it'll set the empty blank at the board spot to become whoever the current player is. So let's go ahead and do that. Place marker, and we're going to place it at x, y, and we're going to use current player. So let's see what this does so far. Okay, let's do this so far and see how good it looks. It's not done, obviously, but let's just see what happens. I got build errors. Must have done something wrong. I've got 2 unresolved externals. That means I probably didn't put Tic Tac Toe game after get. Yes, I did not. If you have unresolved externals, it means you have a declaration up here, like these get x chord and get y chord were declared up here, but they weren't defined in here because these get x chord and get y chord functions were different since they didn't have this before it. So now we should be able to run it. Here we go. All right, so it's x's turn. Enter the x coordinate, we're going to say 1. Enter the y coordinate, we're going to say 1. And there we go. It placed it at 1, 1. Now remember, the reason it placed it in the middle is because arrays are 0 indexed. So what we want to do is actually place it at the input -1. So if they type in a 1, we want to actually put it at array coordinate 0, right? But that works. So let's actually try 0, 0. That'll place an x there. See, it's working. We're actually placing down pieces. Now we just need to make it so that it switches turns, and we also need to make it so that the input works correctly. So we can't actually quit the game. I'm going to hit X. All right, now let's go back up here to, let's fix that input. Here we go. We're going to return y -1 or something like that, and return x -1. And then what we can actually do is check if the input is bad in here. So if they type in an x chord that isn't in the right range, we can just ask them for the x coordinate again. And what we can do is say bool is input bad equals true. So we're going to start out saying the input is bad. Now while is input bad is equal to true, we're going to keep doing this right here. And let's declare int x outside. Because if you declare int x inside, you're not going to have it here. Anytime an integer is declared inside, for instance, a while loop, once you are outside the while loop, it doesn't exist anymore. So we have to declare it here. All right, so input bad is true. While input bad is true, we're going to enter the x coordinate. And then after we get this cnx here, we're going to say if x is less than 1 or x is greater than 2 or greater than 3, then that means they typed it in wrong. So we're going to say cout invalid coordinate and then a new line. And then what we're going to just do is it's just going to loop again because bad input is still equal to true. But if it was good, so else, if the input was okay, we're going to say is bad input equals false. So if they type in something between 1 and 3, is bad input is going to be equal to false, and we're going to just return x -1. And that'll give us the array coordinate that we'll use right here. And let's just copy paste this over top of get y chord and change everything to a y. Y. Copy pasting can be dangerous because you could be copy pasting errors, but I trust myself. Alright, this should work. It's going to check both of our inputs to make sure they are correct. Now what we need to do is change players. Right now we're not checking to see if he won, but that's okay. So let's write a function change players. And what we're going to do is pass in the current player and just change that. Actually, we don't even need a function. This is going to be such an easy thing. Let's just write it right here. So if current player is equal to x, or is equal to player 1, I should say. If current player is equal to player 1, then we say current player equals player 2. Otherwise, so else, that means current player was equal to player 2, so we say current player equals player 1. So that'll switch players each time we go through the loop. So we're going to say switch players, because we need to actually take turns. And this is really simple. We didn't have to put that in its own function because it's so small. So now we have the printing of the board, we have the getting of the input, we have placing the markers, and we have switching players. What we need to actually do now, let's see, did we actually, what does place marker do? It returns false. We never actually checked this. So we need to check and make sure he placed it in the right spot. So if, remember, place marker is going to return false if he wasn't allowed to place it there, and it's going to return true if he was allowed to place it there. So if place marker is equal to false, meaning he wasn't allowed to place it there, we're going to say cout can't place, or that spot is occupied, or something like that. And then what we're going to do is enclose the actual team switch inside an else statement. So what that's going to do is make it so that if place marker is false, we're going to skip the team switch. So the same player gets to go again, and we're just going to print the board again. So let's go ahead and run that and see what it looks like. I enter the x coordinate 1, y coordinate 1. There we go. It placed it in the correct spot. Now let's see if it switched teams. Let's say x coordinate 2, y coordinate 1. There we go. We got an x and a y. And I don't know why I'm using y. It should be an o, but that's okay. We'll change that. And then let's try one more time. X equals 3, y equals 1. There we go. We have an x, y, x. Team switching is working. Let's try placing an x on top of an x that's already there. Let's type 1, 1. See, it says that spot is occupied, and then we get to go again. So we could type 2, 1, and that spot is occupied too. But if we type 1, 2, that spot is not occupied. So it works. And let's see. That seems to be working fine. Everything looks okay. So let's go ahead and actually check to see if the game should be over. So what we need to do is actually check the rows and columns and see if somebody won. So what we're going to do is write a new function, and we'll call it, let's say, void check for victory. So that's going to check and see if somebody won. And what we can do is make it return a Boolean that is true if there's a victory and false if there isn't a victory. All right, so let's go here. And where did I put it? I put it below place marker. So let's find place marker and put it below it. All right, and then of course we need to put our Tic Tac Toe game : there. All right, so this is going to check for the victory. So we actually need to check the rows and columns and diagonals and see if they are matching. Now, if we call check for victory after each player places a piece, then we know that only the player who just placed a piece can win. Because if I just place an X, that doesn't mean that the O player, let's go ahead and change that to an O, by the way, because I don't like X. That means that the O player could not possibly win because I just placed an X. If he had won, he would have already won in the previous round. So we don't actually have to check which player has 3 in a row. We just can assume that if we find something that's 3 in a row, the current player won. There we go, just cleaning things up here. All right, so check for victory. All we need to do is check if we have 3 in a row in any of those directions. So first, let's check the rows. So what we can actually do is write a function that checks a row. Now we could either do that or we could just write the whole thing in here. I'm going to write the whole thing in here because I don't want to have a whole bunch of functions just for this check for victory. I'm just going to write it all in check for victory. So let's check row 1, and to do that we have to say if, and we're going to say board 0, 0 is equal to board 0, 1. And then we do an and board 0, 1 is equal to board 0, 2. So this is going to check the top row. Let me open up Paint and actually show you. Let's undo all of my scribbles here. And let's make it a checkerboard, like a tic-tac-toe board like this. So since we are looping through, or we're actually not looping right now, but we probably should make it a loop. Since we are going like this through the row, we're only looking at the 0th column, which is the first column or sorry, the first row, and we're looping through column 0, column 1, and column 2. Now we can't do this, unfortunately. We can't say if this is equal to this is equal to this. We have to use an AND like this. So we have to check if these two pieces are equal to each other separately. And what we're basically doing is, let me pull up Paint, is what we're doing is first we're checking if this x is equal to this x or something. We're checking if these two are equal, and then we're also checking if this x is equal to this x. If that is true, if this one is equal to this one, and this one is equal to this one, then that's 3 in a row. However, if this last one is an O, like this, we're going to check, is this equal to this? Yes, this is equal to this. So that's correct. But then we have the AND right here, because both of these statements have to be true. We have the AND, and then we're checking, does this equal this? And in that case, no, it doesn't equal that. Or if it was an empty space, it also doesn't equal that. So in that case, we are not going to have 3 in a row. So we can just do that for each row. So what we can actually do is just loop through the rows, so we don't have to type this out a bunch of times, right? So if that happens, if that's equal to each other, we return true. We won. There we go. So let's actually loop through it so we don't have to write this 3 times. For int I equals 0, I is less than 3. Then I plus plus. And let's enclose this if statement like this. And then instead of saying board 0, we just say board I. So this is going to go through each of these 3 rows, and it's going to check from left to right like that. All right, that's our rows. Now we need to check columns, so top down. It's basically the same thing. We just reverse the coordinates. It's going to be really easy. We just copy this. Instead of saying I0, I1, I2, we say 0I, 1I, and 2I. Very, very simple. And 2I. And this is check the columns. And check the rows here. Hey guys, sorry about that, lost video for a second. Anyways, what I was saying was this second I variable right here that's being used to iterate through the columns is going to make it so that instead of checking from left to right like this, we are checking from top to bottom. We just kind of flipped the order there, and that'll do our columns. And since we just flipped everything around, it's going to work nicely. Now we need to check the diagonals, and for this one we're not going to use a for loop. What we're going to do is just copy this because that's our basic syntax. Let's copy it right here. First we'll do check left top left diagonal. So this is going to check the diagonal that looks like, oops, it looks like this. We're going to check this one first. And this is coordinate 0, 0, this is coordinate 1, 1, and this is coordinate 2, 2. So that makes it really, really easy. We just say, we don't even need an I because we're not looping. A 0, 0, 1, 1, and then 1, 1 is equal to 2, 2. That'll check that diagonal. And then we just need to check the top right diagonal. And for that one, we have, let's see, paint. We have for this one, it's going to be 0, 2, 1, 1, and then 2, 0, if we're going by column first. So let's see, check right diagonal is going to be 2, 0, 1, 1, 0, 2. That should work. So that's going to check all of the cases where we won. If none of these return, then that means we didn't win, so we just put a return false, false at the end. So at the end, we are going to say, where are we? Here's our play game. So we place the marker. If that doesn't work, we say that spot's occupied and we try again. However, if it does work, what we're going to do is check for victory. So if check for victory is equal to true, if that's the case, then what we're going to do is see out the game is over. And then player, and we'll say current player has won. And then a new line. And then since the game is over, we're going to say is done equals true. Is done is equal to true. and that will end the game, and it'll drop out of all these loops and stuff, and it'll be great. So one last thing we need to do, we need to check for a tie game. And the way we know it's a tie game is if we've check for victory is a function, needs parentheses. The way we know it's a tie game is if we've actually placed 9 pieces. So all we need to do is count how many times we go through and place a marker. And each time we place a marker, we'll increase this number by 1. So int turns, or just turn, and we'll say turn equals 0. And each time we do a turn, so each time we get in this else function, each time we successfully place something, we're going to say turn plus plus. So that'll add a turn. And then if there is no victory, and let's see, and we are on the last turn, which is if turn is equal to 9, I believe. If that happens, then we are going to see out it's a tie game, like that. And it looks like we're pretty much done. Is done is going to also be true again because this game is done. Now all we need to do is ask them if they want to play again. And we can do that in the main function here. We can have a, let's see, bool, another bool is done equals false. And we'll say while is done is equal to false. This will keep looping. We'll do game.playGame. And then we'll say, let's see, char input. We're going to ask them to input a char. And we'll say, see out, would you like to play again? And then we'll say input a yes or a no, like that. And then what we can do is say cin input, and then if input is equal to a capital Y, or let's let them also put in a lowercase y, they are actually different letters, or is equal to a lowercase y, then we're going to assume that means yes, we want to play again. So we're going to say is done equals false, which it already is equal to false, so we don't even have to do anything. So what we can actually do is just check if input is equal to n and input is equal to lowercase n, we'll say is done equals true. And otherwise, if they typed in anything else, if they typed in the letter Q, if they typed in a Y or a lowercase y, we're going to assume they meant to say yes. So they have to explicitly say no right here. Otherwise, it's going to be fine. We could say else if input is equal to yes, but the logic works out to where we don't actually have to do that. All right, so let's run our game and see what happens. Let's see if it works. All right, I'm going to zoom in here. It's been a long episode, but hopefully you've learned a little something. All right, we're going to enter... we already got player X is 1, so obviously something's not working. X1 immediately. So what's wrong is our check victory function is returning true when it shouldn't. So let me unzoom here. Let's go to our... We're definitely checking for if check victory is equal to true. So let's see here. We return true only if these are equal to each other. Here's the thing. We are checking if they are equal to each other, but spaces are also equal to each other. So if we just have spaces here, like I just placed an X right there, whenever we did our check, these spaces are equal to each other. So we have to do one more little and to make sure that we're not checking spaces. Anything but a spaces, and we'll know that it's a victory. So let's go to tutorial videos. Let's make this easy and just make it make sense. Let's just pass in the current player. Char current player, and we'll check to make sure that the current player's row is the one that is selected. Check for victory, char current player. So we'll pass in current player here. There we go. And then down here, we're going to actually check it. So we need to also say if board I 0 is equal to current player. Because if this row doesn't have the current player as the first element, then we don't even care. We know he didn't win with this check. So we're just going to do this for all of them. For board I0, for board 0I, and then for the left diagonal, we're going to say for board 00, and then for right diagonal, we're going to say board 20. So now it should work. Let's go ahead and run it again. So now if we zoom in here, we type a 1, 1. There we go. It puts an X. If we enter a 2, 1, it puts an O there. A 3, 1 puts an X there. Let's put an O at 1, 2, and let's put an X at 2, 2. Let's put an O at 3, 2, and let's put an X at 1, 3, which will win the game. There it goes. It says the game is over, player X has won. Would you like to play again? Yes. And there we go. It plays again, but look, it's showing us the same board because we forgot to clear the board. So let's actually do that. Instead of clearing the board in the constructor, we can just clear the board at the beginning when we play the game, like this. So we just clear the board at the very beginning each time we play the game, and that'll fix it. So now that's fixed. Let's see if we can get a tie game properly. Let's see if that works. Enter X coordinate 1, 1, then 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3. I have to try not to accidentally win. 1, 3, then 3, 1, and then 3, 2, and then 3, 3. There we go. It's a tie game. Would you like to play again? No. And it ends the game. So there you have it, guys. There's our Tic Tac Toe game. How long did this episode take? Probably like 40 minutes or something, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you are able to actually create your own game. Maybe this helped you out with your game, figuring out kind of how you should structure it, what the logic is. You could do something like make this char board actually in its own game board class or something, and you could put PrintBoard or ClearBoard in that game board class, so you could have multiple classes and things like that. You can do whatever you want. I really urge you to go above and beyond. I'm going to put this code in the description so you can grab it and modify it, maybe make it better if you want to. You can do whatever you want. Thanks for joining me, guys, with this challenge episode. Stay tuned for the next few episodes. The third challenge episode is going to be even cooler. Thanks, guys.